I'm thrilled with today's guests. They've been very much in the news. Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, the authors of Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, its cover-up, and his disastrous choice to run again. Not many books explain it all in the title. This one certainly does. Guys, I know how busy you are. I really appreciate it. Jake, welcome back. And Alex, nice to meet you and talk to you.
Nice to meet you.
Great to be here. Thanks, Donny.
So what was the tipping point where you guys said, before we get into the book, just can we do a little current events, obviously, what's going on in Los Angeles? Jake, I'd love first your take on the chain of events on what's going down in Los Angeles.
Well, I mean, I think obviously there are a lot of dynamics going on here. There's a tension between Trump and Newsom. There is the fact that this is a fight Donald Trump has wanted to have for some time. He was frustrated by the guardrails that restrained him in the first term when it came to not putting the National Guard out there to keep the peace in the streets after the murder of George Floyd. He was frustrated with Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, telling him not to declare martial law or use the Insurrection Act. And now he is not so restrained. And then larger, I think that there just is this inherent tension between blue cities that don't, sanctuary cities that have completely different takes on immigration and illegal immigration and the like, and President Trump's view of immigration, which is one of the reasons he was elected. And I think that inherently there is going to be a conflict. It doesn't have to be a violent conflict, but the center cannot hold when there are these two completely different views of how immigration should function in this country.
Alex, the politics of it all, is it safe to say that if we're talking about immigration, Trump wins, that he loves this discussion, he loves this conflict, and that in the most simplistic term, it's crime, order versus crime, and it's just, obviously that's the simplistic, dumbed down version of it, but that's my concern about it, that Trump wins this fight every single time.
I think if you look at the last election, certainly it is home territory. But that being said, and you see this with how Newsom's acting, and you're going to see it, I think, over and over again. The politics for individual Democrats are to pick a fight too.
Yes.
Right. To elevate their profile in
yes.
order to bring them as like the Trump enemy number one. And I think the politics of this, I do think on a policy level at the moment probably do benefit Trump. But I also think we're careening to a place where these conflicts there's not really an incentive to de-escalate. There are political incentives on both sides to escalate and keep this conflict going.
Jake, I guess the big question, obviously we were going to get rid of the worst, the criminals and whatnot. And what we have is a lot of people being rounded up who are integrated into our society, who kids are in school, who are workers, who are paying taxes. How does the public really start to understand who the people are that are getting picked up? Because that's obviously the great differentiator.
Yeah, most people have no problem with President Trump deporting violent gang members, murderers, rapists, hardened criminals. And that was the impression that Trump's top aides, although I'm not sure Trump himself gave as to what the priorities would be when it came to deportation. The issue is that I don't know how many undocumented immigrants there are in this country, but let's say it's 15 to 20 million. The problem is that, the vast majority of the undocumented immigrant community are not violent criminal offenders. The vast majority are people who are, serving the country in various ways, whether they're picking lettuce or working in the tourism industry or day laborers outside Walmart or Home Depot. And so the reality is that in order to make the numbers that Stephen Miller, the top White House Trump aide, wants to make, which is 3,000 arrests a day, there just aren't that many hardened criminals like sitting out there waiting to be arrested. If they were, they'd be in prison. So the only way to meet those numbers, and by the way, Stephen Miller and Donald Trump's position is very clear and has been: every undocumented immigrant in this country should be out of this country. And that actually is a position supported by the American people when you poll on it. Now, if you poll a little deeper and say, what if that means you can't get lettuce? What if that means you can't go on vacation to Disney World, et cetera, you get different polling numbers. But the American people, generally speaking, support his goal and have issues with his tactics.
It's interesting you bring that up, Alex. I'd love your take on this. And I obviously was a very passionate anti-Trumper. When you look at some of the core things he's trying to do, they're not wrong. Obviously, it's just everything is an overreach. By the way, do we need to clean up immigration? Absolutely. Was DEI out of control? Absolutely. Do we need to get more government spending under control? Government waste under control? Absolutely. It's just there's this crazy Trump overreach in everything he does. That's the interesting dichotomy of things as far as I see it.
When you see this and this is why the risk of it actually being a political backlash on Trump, because they are going to deport people that are pillars of their communities. There was a great New York Times piece just like a week and a half ago about this woman, I believe it was in Missouri or Arkansas, who was, had come from Hong Kong and had been in the community for decades. And they are going to deport those people. And this is also sort of there's like some tension with Trump trying to always thrill the base of his party. I still remember being in Madison Square Garden for that last pre-election rally, and you have the entire Madison Square Garden chanting "Send them back, send them back." But I don't know if that's a 50+1%. If in the actual pragmatic aspects of it, but Trump and Stephen Miller, they don't mind, and in fact, they sometimes target to try to try to provoke outrage. And I agree, sometimes that there is a risk of a political backlash, because I am not sure every single, it's a majority or 80-20 issue to deport some of those people that have been parts of their community and churches for 30 years. One
of the reasons, Donny, and you know this better than I, but one of the reasons why this issue has been so intractable for a political resolution is that the Chamber of Commerce and the big moneyed interests in this country want that cheap labor.
Absolutely.
They want it in this country because without that cheaper labor, the tourism industry, the agricultural industry, et cetera, not all of them, but a sizable percentage will collapse. And what's interesting, there were undocumented immigrants at Mar-a-Lago. This has been covered before, but where you see these ICE raids going on is very telling. They are not sending them in general to red states. Yeah. They are not sending them in general to the farms of big but moneyed Republican contributors. They're sending them to the Home Depot in downtown Los Angeles. So they are picking their targets with political considerations in mind.
So what's the Democratic playbook going forward? But this issue and others, Democrats, it's been well documented. We've all talked about it ad nauseum. The Democrats are lost. The party doesn't really have a vision at this point. Jake, if they brought you in and you are now the czar of what the Democrats should do, what advice would you give them?
Well, I don't know that I would be a good czar for them because I'm not a member of their party, right. And I don't think particularly highly of where they are right now. But I think the more that they can get to being seen as people who will pave the roads, fix the systems, come up with common sense compromises, et cetera, solving problems, and the less they are seen as doing things that are performative just to oppose Trump. I know Democrats who let's take, for example, the advocacy for Abrego Garcia. That's the guy, the undocumented immigrant from Maryland, who was not supposed to ever be deported to El Salvador, but was deported to El Salvador. And Democrats made a big cause celeb out of him. Well, even after it came out that his wife had filed complaints with the police saying that he beat her. Now she's standing by him and all that, but why are the Democrats expending? I understand that they have this theoretical argument about due process, but why aren't they advocating for that woman from Missouri that Alex just talked about? That was in that New York Times story. There are far more compelling stories of far more vulnerable individuals who are being hurt by all this, by Trump's immigration policies, than a wife beater, and yet Democrats can't seem to get out of their own way. and and whether it's standing up for protesters at Harvard that in many cases, seem to be making Jewish students on campus uncomfortable and unsafe, or the wife beaters who are being deported or whatever. I just, who are they advocating for? I mean, I think that's a real question for the Democratic Party.
Let's sell some books. The book is a runaway bestseller. It has become part of our culture. Guys, take me back to the moment where you guys got together and go, let's dig deep into this thing. And 200 interviews later, you have an incredibly important book.
I mean, Jake should tell the story because the book was his idea and he approached me.
So I just, before the election, like just a few days before the election, I thought, I'd been talking to Democrats and it seemed obvious that Kamala Harris was going to lose. And that a lot of Democrats thought that the original sin was that Joe Biden had decided to run for re-election to begin with, knowing that he would be 86 at the end of his second term, knowing that his capacity to campaign or even just to basically communicate had diminished. And then, of course, came the debate where we saw that all the images that we had seen on our TV screens of him tripping and having gaffes, that it was much, much worse than what we ever expected, or what we ever thought was how bad it was. And so I had the idea that I should write a book called Original Sin. And then I've long admired Alex's reporting. He was a very tough reporter trying to cover some of these issues for Axios. And for that reason, I booked him on my show and pushed CNN to hire him as a commentator because he was really filling a void. And very impulsively, Donny, I don't know if you can relate to this or not. Probably you can. Very impulsively, I just decided, maybe he'd be a good person to write this book with, and just asked him. He was on my show the day before the election. Hey, I think this is what I'm thinking. Would you be interested in working on this with me, a book like this? Just 50-50, we work together and all that. And I don't know how seriously he took it. But the day after the election, I sent him a book proposal, and we got to work.
Alex, what was the single most surprising anecdote? And obviously the book is chock full of them, where you went, I can't believe this actually went down, and I can't believe they actually were moving forward given this situation.
There are a lot.
I don't say this because this is the most shocking, but it was one of the first. I had one source on this before the election, but I didn't report it because it wasn't good enough for one source. So, but I corroborated it, which is, and it was just one of the first things we found out, so it sticks out, which is the night of the State of the Union in 2024, when it's like this huge victory lap moment. Because Joe Biden has, beat back the Ezra Kleins of the world that are saying he's not up to this. And, he's, gives this very vibrant performance in front of everybody. And then after that commanding performance, his ability to speak and talk and relate to people in meetings afterward. There was like sort of a rah-rah with small staff. Then there was, a group of sort of high schooler Senate aides that had come and were really excited. And White House officials, at this point, they had really shielded him from a lot of White House staff. This was some of the first time that some White House staff had seen him in months. And they were shocked because the Biden that we saw on the debate stage a few months later, they were seeing that guy then. And the fact that they were that the very night that he was beating back these concerns about his age, just a few hours later, his own staff were like, "This is crazy. What are we doing? We are sleepwalking into disaster. He can't do this. He can't run a re-election campaign. He can't serve for another 4 years. Even some people were like, can he be president right now?" And I think the fact that it was that evident to people behind closed doors, including on the very night that the public was at least temporarily sort of reassured, I thought was just like a striking moment.
Jake, the conventional wisdom is, okay, the midterms were the time for him to get out. What was his state of mind at that point? And obviously the book talks about there was a tale of two Bidens, and it depends when you got him. At that point, with all your analysis and all the interviews, what was his state of mind at that point?
Well, he had a better midterm than Obama did and then Bill Clinton did.
Yeah.
And the implicit promise that he was only going to be a one-term president was never made explicitly and never made by him. We traced the roots of it. We all first got the idea that he was only going to be a one-term president in December 2019, when 4 different Biden aides leaked to one reporter, Ryan Lizza of Politico, that, hey, Biden's only going to serve one term. They were trying to get it out in the ether there because they knew this was the major concern that Democratic voters had. So Ryan says this, he thought it was a strategic leak. So he wrote the story, basically that, Biden would only serve one term. And then in March of 2020, when he was uniting the non-Bernie candidates around his candidacy, and he did that event in Michigan with Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and Gretchen Whitmer, he referred to himself as a bridge. So we all thought, okay, he's only going to be a one-termer, or we didn't think that, but that was the impression they were trying to give. I never thought that because, and I'm sure Alex didn't, and you probably didn't either, Donny, because politicians have huge egos, and once they're in that seat, they think they can do it forever. Yeah. So after the 2022 midterms, when they didn't go as poorly as people had thought, Biden was like, great, this is a reaffirmation of my presidency. Now, in reality, what I think it was more of was it was a backlash to the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, and also Trump had not interfered illegally, but Trump had gotten involved in primaries and had picked a bunch of dud MAGA candidates that made it so the Senate was going to be difficult for Republicans to win as many seats as they wanted. But that was it. But that would have been the perfect moment for somebody, some sort of team of elders or some sort of strong party chairman, which they did not have one, and Jamie Harrison, to say, hey, it's great that the midterms did not go as poorly as possible, but the American people still think we're on the wrong track. They still disapprove of how you're handling the economy. Inflation is still 9%, et cetera, et cetera. You should probably think about not running for reelection. But that's Earth 2 thinking. Nobody would ever say that to a president of the United States anywhere else. But like in retrospect, that's what should have happened, because they were seeing these moments of addlement, these moments where he could not communicate. In December 2022, there's a moment where he can't come up with the name of his own national security advisor, Jake Sullivan. He can't come up with the name of his own communication director, Kate Bedingfield. And so he's starting to have those moments that become much, much worse by 2023, 2024.
Alex, how complicit is the media in this? And obviously, the book outlines a cadre of his inner circle that led to this cover up, and that's not an overuse of that word. And you guys have obviously used it in the title. How much were we wishing it away, where it was there to see? That we didn't see obviously everything that you guys outlined in the book, but how much of it, and I'll put myself into this category, were because of the desire for not another Trump term, there was not necessarily a viable alternative, were we wishing it away?
I do think there was some. I think the first thing is the media is not a monolith here. So I think there are a bunch of different buckets here. But I do think among some, commentators and some reporters, there was some of that. And also because the threat of Trump, and also you're like, I don't care if Joe Biden, I think there are tens of millions of people in this country that they're like, I don't care that Joe Biden can't remember Jake Sullivan's name. That I will take Joe Biden at not remembering Jake Sullivan's name over Donald Trump at 365 days a year. I will take Joe Biden at this moment over Trump right now. I will take Joe Biden at 100 years old over Donald Trump. I do think the sort of the fear. We have like a line in the book where it's like the fear and anxiety about Donald Trump, made people. It should have shocked people into reality, because the thing is that it's very hard to win 270 electoral votes thinking that way, right? Like I don't know if 50+1 of the country would take Joe Biden at 100 over Donald Trump, and that was sort of this political risk. That was not really stress tested internally. And I think people were just, white knuckling it and saying, we can get to election day and we'll figure it out after that. Because it was just about beating Trump. Now, in terms of the larger question you asked about the media, it's complicated. Some of it was lack of skepticism, sort of the the DC groupthink press bubble that we've seen in other issues in the past, where, when everyone is all the senior advisors are waving you off and saying he's great in all the meetings, you should see him. It makes you second guess yourself, and you're like, well, why is no one else reporting it? And then I think, the other thing that frustrated me at the time was the age issue was talked about a lot, but only in the frame of it being a political vulnerability, and not in the way of this is actually impacting his ability to do the job. And we should think about it in that way too. So those are just a few of the things.
Jake, out of all the characters in there, is it fair to say that Jill Biden could have been a figure that could have changed the course of history, that she was obviously his great defender, obviously his most trusted aide? Where does she come out in history here?
She does not seem to be the kind of spouse who tells somebody when they are messing up. She does not seem to be the kind of spouse who tells somebody that they're being an ass. I do not mean this as a criticism, but keep in mind when she entered Joe Biden's life, he had just lost his wife and daughter in a horrible car accident in 1972. His two sons were sent to the hospital. And she has been an incredibly supportive spouse. What he probably needed, and look, I am not one, and neither is Alex, to blame this on Jill Biden. There is a Lady Macbeth quality out there of, people want to blame this all on her. This was a decision made by Joe Biden, and Jill and Hunter were part of it, but Joe Biden was the president, and he knows. Donny, you and I are a little older than this one here.
Much older. I'm much older than both of you.
I'm 56.
I'm 67.
Okay, so, but you're aware of your aging.
Yes.
I am aware of my aging.
100%. 100%.
I'm aware of where my brain isn't as sharp. I'm aware of where my body isn't as agile, et cetera, et cetera. Joe Biden is aware of what's going on to him. He might be in denial about it. He might be lying to himself. He might be pretending that he isn't, but he knows what's going on. So I do blame him, but she was his chief enabler. She was his chief protector. The system that she built around him, her chief of staff, Anthony Bernal, the most powerful first lady's chief of staff in the history of the White House, had an oversized role into what President Biden did, how he was portrayed, how he seemed. He needed to sign off on everything along with the White House chief of staff, whether Ron Klain or Jeff Zients. And, I think she played a considerable role. But at the end of the day, I put the blame on him. And then secondarily, Jill and Hunter. And then beyond that, the Politburo, as they were called, the top aides and advisors, Steve Ricchetti, Mike Donilon, who tried to hide as much of this as possible from not only the press and the public, but from their own cabinet secretaries, from top Democrats in Congress, from donors, et cetera, to the point that we were all so stunned on the debate night.
I remember sitting there, my mouth open, just literally my mouth open. Alex,
so was his.
Alex, there's what blew me away as an ad guy. They tried to film 3 ads and they couldn't use them because the level of incompetence was stunning.
Well, and so what I think you're talking about is where they staged a town hall.
In
the spring of 2024. They did it in Delaware because home crowd. They filled it with, and the thing is, this has been done before. Hillary Clinton did an ad like this. Pete Buttigieg has done an ad like this. But the difference was they were actually doing real town halls in addition to the fake town hall. Joe Biden was not doing any town halls, but they staged a town hall in a gym in Wilmington, filled it with supporters, and even in those controlled settings, and this is 3 months before the debate, I think, and even those controlled settings, it was determined that the performance was so bad that they ended up not using any of the ads. Now, the Biden campaign has come back, and they have said they have since released the early cuts of the ads, which are full of jump cuts and super cuts and weird things. And they basically said, well, we were holding on to the footage for the fall. Maybe that's true, but Democratic ad maker Mark Putnam, I think, said that these ads were bad, and while maybe some people like Mike Donelon thought the ads were serviceable, there were people in the Biden campaign that did not believe so. And I think again, it sort of shows that even if they don't admit it now, or still not admitting it to themselves, they knew that he was having significant deterioration of his communication abilities throughout dramatically in 2023 and early 2024.
The sad thing is, Donny, that their response to our book, they have not been able to successfully rebut the book or challenge it in any tangible, substantive way because it's true. And it's the same problem. They have the same problem now that they had after the debate, which was all the Democrats and all the punditocracy, and probably you, I know I was saying it, I'm sure Alex was saying it, was like, there's a very easy way to put this to bed. Just go out and do 10 interviews, 10 town halls, 10 press conferences, show people that was a one-off. And they never did it because they couldn't do it because he wasn't able to do it. And that answers the question. It's like when he went on The View to pre-butt our book, supposedly, and he seemed not entirely there, and Jill Biden was like jumping in for, to answer his questions. And there went that strategy because he can't do it. He can't do it. And it's sad and it's tragic. And if it were just, a guy who ran the local Walmart, it would just be a sad little business story, but it's not. It's obviously much more consequential. And President Trump is president largely because of this. And that's our theory anyway.
Yeah. I applaud you guys dramatically for writing this book. There has been some pushback from Democrats. So, why now, with all the problems that's happening with Trump? Why are we looking backwards? And it gives them an out. What's your reaction to that?
People are still writing books about World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd add to that, we've honestly, the first instinct of writing this book is, and Jake sort of put it so plainly when we started, he's like, I just want to know what happened.
Yeah.
And so we felt that we just wanted to write this as sort of the first draft of history, regardless of what the politics of the moment were going to be in May.
We didn't even have a publisher, Donny. I was saying to Alex, because we started writing and reporting it right the day after Election Day. I don't think we got a publisher until like December officially. I was like,
I would have thought I thought they'd be chomping at the bit. That's really interesting.
It was a competitive bidding process, but it took a little while. But my only point is, like, I was like, if you and I self-publish this and put it out on Kindle, that's fine. Yeah, I just want to know what happened and write it. Like, I would have read it if somebody else was going to do it, but they weren't, so we were going to do it.
I'd also say just the one last thing is but what about Trump is part of the reason that Democrats are in this position in the first place. Yeah. I mean, the what about Trump was the response to every story I did about Joe Biden's age in 2023 and 2024. And, I think reporting at its best is holding up a mirror to a political party or people in power. And I felt in that case, instead of looking in the mirror, they looked away and pointed at Trump. And I think it allowed them to sleepwalk into this political disaster.
But the other thing, Donny, is Alex and I are wired similar to how you are, I assume, and like we are competitive, and we would have loved to have reported any of this over the past 4 years if we'd known it. You don't think I would have loved to have reported like, hey, Joe Biden didn't recognize George Clooney behind the scenes of that fundraiser last night? Of course I would have. But the problem was that fear of Trump was so imbued in Democrats that anything that they shared with press, they were afraid of helping get Trump elected. So it wasn't until after Election Day, almost all the interviews for the book, more than 200 people we talked to, were after the Election Day, when they no longer felt that sort of Damocles hanging over them. And they felt like they could talk to us because the threat of Trump had become the reality of Trump. And so they were willing to talk. But I mean, why didn't we share this a year ago? Because we didn't know it a year ago. Yeah. We didn't. I mean, I would have loved to have reported it a year ago, but a reporter is only as good as his or her sources.
Jake, you mentioned, both you guys talked about how there doesn't seem to be a lot of remorse or mea culpa from the other side, to the point where Biden recently came out and saying he wants to challenge you to a fight. I was. Did that actually happen? I'm reading that and going, wait, did he actually say that?
He did.
Oh, it definitely happened.
Yeah.
We weren't sure if it was at the same time or consecutive in terms of the fighting, but that was an interesting response. Not the first time a member of the Biden family has threatened me, but possibly the last.
Well, guys, I really appreciate your time. The book is an important part of history. As I said, I applaud both of you. It's a runaway bestseller, Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choices to Run Again. Before I let you go, give me a prognosis of where we are as a country right now, both of you. I love you. I'm Mr. Optimist. It's hard to be Mr. Optimist in the day after day after day after day of what we see. Jake, make me feel better.
I mean, the country has gotten through much worse than this. It just has. We've had a civil war. I mean, we've had states break away from the country. And I do feel like this is a very fraught time. And I'm much more concerned actually about the misinformation silos that the left and the right find themselves in more than I am about the political divisions. But those misinformation silos do feed the political divisions. But that said, I do still think most lawmakers are in Washington because they want to solve problems. I do still believe in the fundamental goodness of the American people. And I have no reason to believe that there isn't going to be a midterm election in 2026 and another presidential election in 2028. And just like this part, the country keeps swinging to the left and then it swings to the right and it swings back and forth. And there will be a time, Donny, that you and I look back in this conversation and we say, well, that was a rough period, but we got through it.
Alex?
I do believe that. I
was one of the people who initially, when Trump got... I am more optimistic than when Trump took office. I was one of those people. He's not leaving office. We are headed to the end of our democracy. I don't feel that way anymore. I don't know if I'm just whistling past the graveyard. Alex, I love your thoughts.
I similarly find comfort in reading about all of the dark periods of our history. I was just reading this book, America at Midnight, which is all about the Palmer raids during World War I and how the Justice Department was completely politicized and arresting political opponents of the World War I, and just the rise of the Second Rise, the KKK that was also going on, and the nativist elements, and Woodrow Wilson resegregating. And honestly, it just is it's a reminder that America at several times, if not dozens of times in its history, has been a shit show. And it definitely makes me feel more optimistic about what sort of Jake said is there. And this is not to make light of the potential collateral damage that is being done by what's going on now. And I think that's why I think Jake and I both report on it and report it seriously. But it does still, I guess, give me comfort that the sort of apocalyptic predictions have not borne out before, and I don't believe they're going to bear out now.
So guys, everybody run and get this book, Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. History will thank you guys for writing this. Jake, Alex, I really appreciate it. I know how busy you guys are. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Donny. Great to be back.
Thank you.
Everybody, thanks for watching. If you like it, hit that subscribe button. And we love having you here watching On Brand. And just don't miss any future episodes. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time.